Great. Today we're going to be looking at the 1962 Seattle World's Fair called Century 21. Covered it before, but I've got some pictures that are probably new to folks. Just to put things in perspective, what I do is when I get a box of pictures in of 20, 36 or whatever negatives, I scan them all in rough form, put them on a file folder, and then move on to the next one, keep scanning on one computer, and then eventually, oh, mail phone. Now it's my dog's going to go along. Nobody sneaks into this house. Let me close the door over 1 second. Carol. Yeah, right behind. Okay, anyway, if I knew that exact what time they come, I would schedule these talks for 5 minutes later, but it's always roughly this sort of window. Anyway, what I do is I scan them and then I move on. I use one laptop here scanning away, and then I eventually go back to the computer. But it takes a lot longer to restore them than it does to scan them. So I end up with thousands of unscanned or unrestored pictures, and then I'll see one I particularly like I want to share online. I'll do that when I move on. So what I've done is I went into the folders, just grabbed the restored ones, threw them into a pile. And when I restore some of them, they'll start with like 001, Westgate, 002, whatever. But when I grab them into these presentations, all the 001s would show up together, all the 002s after that. So they're all jumbled all over. So just envision this, that, here's your uncle dragging you down for a slideshow, and he's dropped all the slides and he's just thrown them into a random order, and that's what we're going to see. So if there's any particular things people see, have questions for anything, please let me know. But we're going to go from, like I said, no chronological order. We're going to be at the fair, then we're going to go back to the building of the fair, then we're going to go back to the fair, then we're going to go closing the fair. We're going to go from the east side, west side, north side, all around town. So let me just share screen here. Okay, so again, they're just kind of all over the place, and we're going to start with Pavilion of Africa. Unlike the 64 World's Fair, where there were minor tents done for each of the African nations, here they had one pavilion with just displays inside. This particular building, right off to the right, you can see all the tile work, was Thailand. So the way they built this building, you can see the pylons going up, holding up the roof, was just a back wall and these roofs, and then would divide it into sections. You can see the wall over here dividing Africa from the next one. The individual countries would now be responsible for putting up the facade and also to do the displays inside. But this gave the nations a very economical way to display. Part of the BIE requirements are that you do not charge rent to the international exhibitors that come there. So the World's Fair Corporation built it and did it on a very economical basis for them, because the people inside had to pay for all the exhibits, but they didn't have to pay for the rent itself. So that helped out. And again, we're going to hop all over the place. We've gone a couple of years after the fair. The mural is in the background, is still there today. It is a stage there. But this is one of the things I really enjoyed about what they did with the 62 fair, that they made it into a really great city park. There's so many other fairs that you cannot tell there was a World's Fair there, or there's not a sense of liveliness and vibrancy to it. But this was a great day. I think this was about 10 years after the fair, and you can see the folks up there on the stage entertaining and the crowd enjoying it. Pre-fair, we're building the, I said we're going to jump all over. We're going back and forth. It's the time machine is out of control. It's sort of like Irwin Allen's old Time Tunnel series. You never knew where you were going to end up, but it was always going to be interesting, right? So downtown, they're building the monorail station. We're going to see a number of pictures of downtown Seattle at the time. And the folks that live there or whatever, I'd like to get your thoughts later on of how much it's changed since time. Even things like this whole station has changed. That they redid it and added it onto the side of a building as opposed to being out in the middle of the street. So we're at one of the main entrances here. These totem poles, they were space age totem poles because they were done by machine giant lathes turning them out. But there were different ones at each of the gates to the park. After the fair, they were sold surplus, as you know, you can imagine the city didn't need them. And they showed up at a number of shops and things around the area. And there's still some supposedly standing at some shopping malls in the the greater Seattle area. I don't think it's Seattle itself per se. The Coliseum in the background, we can see just how things have changed over time. You know, all the hats, the dresses, the big giant purses, that sort of thing. So definitely times have changed from the days of World's Fairs then to the way that people go to theme parks and things like that today. One of the exhibit halls, the Hall of Industry in the back, off on the left side is one of the snack bars or souvenir stands. And they had these inverted tent sort of designs over them, give them some shade. But again, sort of cheaply made. They only needed to last for 6 months. But the Hall of Industry in the background, kind of a drab building, but they jazzed it up with the multicolored panels and the kind of a Mondarian artwork design look into it. Off here we have Hawaii, so you have all sorts of leis and stuff you can go and get. Off to the left, a closer view of one of the souvenir stands. Ivar's Fish Bar, they had this restaurant at the fair. Ivar's, matter of fact, the last time Carol and I were up in Seattle, we had something to eat at Ivar's at the airport. So they're still around, still serving fish, but they were a popular place, and it was a nicer restaurant you could go into. It was sort of in between. We'll see a look at the super nice restaurant up at the top of the Space Needle, and we'll also see some hot dog stands and that. Ivar's was sort of in between, but again, it's a long-running Seattle tradition. Back more downtown, the monorail system is still in use today. If you're there, you can get a ride from Seattle Center downtown. It goes back and forth. It's a great thing, and it's amazing to think that that thing is now 60 years old. The company that made it, Alweg, went out of business decades ago. So every time they need to repair one of these, they have to basically make the parts by hand. They had a collision with the monorail red and blue, because they narrowed the track at one point, and they were supposed to have a rule that only one monorail on that section of track at a time, and one of the operators forgot and they hit. So they had to totally rebuild one of the monorails, and luckily they had the blueprints and specifications for it. But if you go up there, you can imagine if you had to keep something 60 years old running, you know, day after day after day, a lot of wear and tear in that equipment. Paul Bunyan's birthday cake were inside the food circus, which was in the former Armory building. And they did a real nice job of taking the Armory, which was a building that could not be destroyed, basically under the terms of using the site for the fair. But they hung all these giant sashes up top with lights to kind of disguise the giant framework of the building, which was, you know, it's a massive building. You go there today, it's still got a food court and stuff in it, but big enough that, you know, they could drive tanks and stuff in it for training. And this birthday cake was a giant cake. It wasn't just a cardboard or anything, but it was a real cake. And the governor came up the set of stairs here off to the side with a ceremonial saber, cut the first piece of cake and served it to the other dignitaries. But you could go and buy yourself a piece of the birthday cake. And about maybe 6 years ago, I saw somebody trying to sell a piece of it on eBay that they had preserved it all that period of time. I don't know if I'd want to eat it, but it's kind of interesting to think that somebody saved a piece of cake for 50 years. Construction shot. We can see some of the space age totem poles there. Building going up in the background, the Hall of Science, or the Science Center being built there. The Ford Pavilion is just to the left. You can see the geodesic dome poking out and the wooden spires that they had out the outside. Inside the post office, there was a special commemorative stamp issued for the World's Fair. They did a steady business in selling stamps and also special covers, envelopes with designs on it, the ones that you could get for the first day of the stamps issue, or they also had other days during the time the fair was open for, you know, State of Washington Day, State of Seattle Day. You could come and get special cancellations. Over to the right, another medium price restaurant, the Argentina Grill. Over here is, you guys were talking about sculptures before the beginning of it. There was a very small sculpture garden in front of the Seattle First National Bank. Take a look at the facade here of the building. It's a giant map showing where they had their branches. It's a pretty impressive looking building. We're going to see it during the construction phase and realize what you can do to make a very cheap looking building, make it look much more massive and impressive as time goes on. The HMS Bounty, the replica of the ship made for the MGM movie, came to town. We're going to see another shot later on of the sailors on board in character costume and singing sea chanties. But this was a big deal. It sailed into Seattle, and the fire boats came out and met it with streams of water, giving it a dramatic welcome into town. And it was not officially part of the World's Fair, but it was docked nearby at the marina. Just like in '64, for this the first season of the '64 fair, it was part of the World's Fair, and it was docked nearby at the Flushing Meadows marina. But unfortunately, the ship was lost in a hurricane that it should not have been anywhere near. For whatever reason, the captain sailed into it, and it sunk with the loss of life. One I just restored this week. This is the United States Science Center, the courtyard. Lots and lots of people took pictures of the courtyard, all these fountains and the lakes, the lacy art structure in the background, the pillars. If you're from New York, this will look familiar. The same guy that designed this designed the World Trade Center, the one that collapsed. And you can see these elements of his arches very much in evidence in the World Trade Center. But dusk is just hitting here. The lights in the trees have come on. The fountains are going, and I like the way that the lights inside the ball showed up against the solid wall off to the side. The same area in a construction view. Down below the circular thing is going to be filled with trees, and off to the right is a platform going to be built out into the waterway. And where all this junk is standing in the middle, that's all going to be, as in this shot, just full of water. More shots of the Science Center. You can still go there today. They have some very nice displays. It's no longer free. You have to pay to go in, but it's well worth the visit. So many people threw money into these fountains, trying to get coins off across the whole divide of water into the giant fountains that after a while, the coins clogged up the pipes. So the city of Seattle had to come in and empty the pipes out, and they found all sorts of coins which were really valuable now because there were silver coins back in 1962, things like the dimes and that. Even today, the money that people continue to throw into the fountains is used to help defer the operating expense of it. Bless you, Don.
Sorry, excuse me.
No problem. Proof you did get a bug. In one or more of my books about the Seattle Fair, I mentioned these towers. They're very lacy, very elegant, and very deceptive in what it took to build them. Today, I imagine they would precast them with the crane, lift them up, and just plop them down in sight. But here they were built with scaffolds that went up and workers that would assemble the pieces all the way up in the air, up at the top of them. So kind of an interesting design structure. They had to be strong enough to withstand any hurricanes that might come through the area. They're not particularly known for that. But there was a massive windstorm that came through the fairgrounds during the time the fair was open and did a fair amount of damage. to some of the facilities, hurt some people, and these came through it just intact, just fine. But they were quite an engineering marvel. The Olympia Beer Water Ski Show. This was a very late edition of the fair. This was in the old Coliseum, or the field house out there. Again, something that couldn't be torn down. They had to do something with it, and they realized they were going to have this circus in the middle, Circus Berlin, uh, but it was not going to be a real big use. So very shortly before the fair came to be, they went to the fellow that does the uh, water ski shows down in Florida, and he put together this show. So they built these concrete walls. You can see a wall here, a wall on the other side, and filled it with water. And they had 4 free shows a day where they would take you out, do water skiing, jump up and down, clown act, that sort of thing. But again, I think they had something like 45 days from the time they decided to do this to sign the contract, build it, hire the people, train the people, and get it going. So real ambitious activity. The Dupin Fountain in the front foreground there, that's still there today, used very much as a wading pool by local kids when they go out to the fair site. I was in front of the Canada Pavilion. Just enjoyed this one. I think the Space Needle, again, talking about doing things fast, the Space Needle was done in a year. Sitting there, sketching it out on a napkin, deciding we need to do this, let's go raise the money, design it, dig a hole, build it, and put it up in a year. Today, you couldn't even get the environmental impact reports done in a year. I mean, amazing stuff that they did to build it. And, obviously, it totally changed the skyline of the city of Seattle and became very iconic. A lot of people didn't realize at that time that that was not built by the Fair Corporation. It was built by private investors, and it was a very smart move on their part because people are still paying to go up to the top of it today. And the International Fountain, we're going to see some more shots of this over time. They tried their best to keep people out of it with signs and warnings and everything. And as we'll see in other pictures, people like to go in there, particularly in a hot day. So the current International Fountain is much user-friendly. It doesn't have all these impaling type spikes and spokes, and it's not surrounded by sharp-edged rock all over the place. Back downtown, again, the monorail station off to the side, the Toussaint's Wax Museum. We'll see more of that coming up. But a pretty nice day in downtown Seattle, and Monorail Red is making its way to the station. One of the phone booths, this was very futuristic for the time, because up to this point in time, everybody had the square Clark Kent changed to Superman type phone booths where you walked in, closed the door, and here we have an outdoor sort of thing. This then in 64 gave way to the Serpentine phone booths that we saw at the 64 World's Fair, but this was obviously a predecessor of that. No known copies of this phone booth still exist. One copy of the 64 World's Fair ones do. These phones are dial phones. They had demonstrations of touch-tone phones at the Bell System Pavilion, but they were not yet available for actual public use. Big billboard that was shut up in town telling you the World's Fair is coming to town. Down below you can see it's at the United States Science Center, so this was up there during the construction. And here is the line for the Science Center. 1962, big time. Sputnik, the space race, John Glenn, the astronauts, the cosmonauts, and everything. So all sorts of stuff going on. Computers just becoming available for the first time for the average person to see and touch. The Science Center was a huge hit, much more than the backers dared hope for. And all these people lined up. You can see the arches there in the background and the building right underneath the arches. But nothing to keep people entertained other than just their interest of waiting to go in. Off to the right, the chapel with the stained glass window and the wooden arches and the cross up top. Got a kick out of all the colored panels over here, just pieces of plexiglass to break up sight lines. And they also bounce light off them at night, their version of the luminaires that we know so much from the 64 fair. Construction, you would have to put signs up so people knew what was coming. Here in the Sermons from Science Pavilion, just going up, we'll see it in its final stage later on. And if you look in the background, you can see the scaffolds as they're building the roofs, the tops to the arches at the Science Center. Chevron, who it's all big Western-based gas company out here in California. There's still Chevron stations, and charging a fortune. I'm not sure how much gas was back at the time of the '62 fair, but out here in LA right now, you're probably paying about $6.50 a gallon for it, so it's definitely expensive. And then here's some more of the stands from the left side, a snack stand. You can get mixed nuts and various odds and ends. In the background, souvenirs. Courtyard again. Lots of pictures of the courtyard. It's very scenic, and lots of people took pictures. Back to the construction days, the Coliseum going up. This was built as the Century 21, the state exhibit for the state of Washington. But it was designed always to be a sports arena. In my book, I mentioned how it had the dubious distinction of being the only NBA game ever rained out because they came out to play one day and the roof leaked like a sieve, and they had to call the game off because the water was coming down on the court. So I don't think we're going to see too many NBA games having rain delays, but the stadium has been refurbished. The roof has been repaired, and it's still very much in use today. These ticket booths were there before the World's Fair was there, and they're still there today. So if you go to Seattle and you go up to the stadium area, they're still there. I don't think they're pink anymore, but they're still there. Hawaii Pavilion off to the right-hand side. And you can see Circus Berlin. They gave shows at 1 and 4. They were done in the center court of the field with the water show running around the outside. And Circus Berlin was mostly acrobats. It didn't, if you were used to the Ringling Brothers, Barnum Bailey type circus with elephants and trapeze acts and that sort of thing, they did gymnastic type displays in there in the center. It was a popular show, for people to go, but that one you had to pay for. The water ski shows were free. Very interesting Ferris wheel designed by, I don't recall the name of the brothers offhand that did it, but rather than being the traditional thing where you're in a car in between two giant sides of a wheel going around, this was one very thin wheel in the center with the car is on the outside of the wheel, so you can see the down at the very bottom the people just getting seated in the chair to go around. It wasn't quite ready for opening day. They had some bugs to work out on it, but they were very proud of a very innovative design. We'll see some more of that later on. The Hall of Industry saw it before, and again, how the panels, the lighter panels bounce the lights off at night. Downtown, heading out to the World's Fair, standing off in the distance. It's interesting, you try to map these intersections today with Google Earth, and so much of Seattle has changed over the years. It's just exploded in growth. More construction going on up. And here is the Seattle First National Bank. We're taking this picture from where that sculpture garden would be. That metal lace work up there is what you cover over with a giant set of vinyl to show where your branches are. And it makes it look like you have a very impressive 3-story building, and down below you actually have a very small 1-story branch bank building. So again, I just think that the way you can build temporary buildings and fool the eye for things like World's Fairs is a fascinating architectural thing. Outside the chapel off to the right, again looking down towards the hall, the Science Center. I keep calling it the Hall of Science. The actual name is the United States Science Center. And inside it again. Downtown, the monorail station. I think I can zoom in here and see if we can get some of the prices for you here. So here, if we want to ride the monorail, it's 75 cents for adults, 50 cents for children. If you only want to go one way, it's 50 cents or 35 cents. And it's a little bit more expensive than that today, but if you go to Seattle, it's an absolute must do. Keep in mind the price here, because we're going to see another price sign at one of the ticket booths coming in. And everybody that went to the World's Fair got to subsidize the monorail, whether they rode on or not. We're going to see that coming up later. Back inside the food circus is Paul Bunyan standing on top of his giant birthday cake over there. And I got a kick over here, the ye old Dutch smorgasbord. Somehow I thought smorgasbord was a Scandinavian thing. You know, I mean, that's what I've always associated with. But here we have a Dutch smorgasbord. So if there's anybody from Holland here and they know how whether or not they have smorgasbords in Holland, please do let me know. And again, what I get a kick as I'm restoring these, I can zoom in on these things and start looking around in detail as I'm taking out the scratches and that. So you can start seeing the names of the various snack bars and that. A lot of times I will then go and do a Google search to try to figure out was this a local business that had a extra branch at the fair, or was it something created just for the fair? And you can see, you know, the prices here. This whole shop here was nothing but apple products. So apple juice, apples, apple cider, apple fritters, and we can get ourselves a nice ice cold apple juice for only 15 cents. By now, we all know what this is. We're inside the arena now. All those metal cubes are the Century 21, the ride that you would go up into the prediction of the future. You go up in the Bubble-lator, famous round elevator, I think we'll see. But there was a show up there basically saying mankind is facing a path in the road. Are we going to go to the path of future growth and prosperity? Or are we going to take the side road into nuclear oblivion? And think carefully, because once you go down the road, you don't get a chance to go back to the crossroads. So this was all very temporary structure built, and again in a building that was designed to hold sporting events. It was a very innovative way of building something inside without attaching it or doing anything to the main structure of the arena. Little Denmark Inn, again, we had snack bars all over the place, hot dogs and hamburgers and Danish foods and, you know, croissants and pastries and all sorts of different things around. So just hopping around the ground. Again, the United States Science Exhibit. You can see how the light panels over here that I mentioned earlier lit up from the ground, just like they did with the lights for the Expo 67 lights, where they shone lights up and bounced it off an event, or off an item rather, to give you a indirect lighting, not harsh or anything. Platform we saw it being built before. If you go and you watch the movie It Happened at the World's Fair with Elvis Presley, he does a great job of hopping and skipping across some of the stones that are out here in the fountain as he's trying to get away from the security guards. The arena, you can just barely see inside the framework of the exhibit building. Over here we have Japan. Inside you had a display of both traditional Japan tea house sort of design, but also modern Japan electronics and aerospace things coming forward. And the fair was designed to put Seattle on the map and to open up greater trade routes between the Seattle and the Western nations. So Japan was there. Philippines had no less than 3 different exhibits there. So this was as much as Japan trying to tell people that you ought to do business with Japan as the other countries. Tourism was a big thing. They were trying to get people to come there, obviously, to visit, but it was really trying to get people to understand that the technological capabilities of these nations, we could supply all sorts of products that you could fly into Seattle, because air freight was now making very big inroads in the traditional shipping lanes. And why not bring your stuff in from our country? It's kind of a neat artistic shot, the flowers framing the Space Needle. The elevator up at the top looked very reminiscent for those of us at the 64 World's Fair. The difference is they took care of theirs and they still use them. Construction shot, Canada in the background. Coliseum, again in the back, Century 21. Off to the left, electric cab. You could go and get rides around the fair in these. They had little bicycle-powered carts that you could rent, which had been very popular at World's Fairs up to then, and didn't have the pedal bikes at 64, but this would be their version of the escorters driving you around. Back inside the food court, you can see lots of people like to go inside. It was the cheapest place to eat, but there was also a tremendous variety, all sorts of different food, and it was air conditioned for the warmer days that you might get. Now, this is a construction shot, somebody putting a finishing touch on the International Fountain. Over to the left, you have the Hofbräu House, that dome, the circular areas over there. But again, the fountain today is much more hospitable, and they openly welcome you coming out to jump in the water and get as wet as you want. Belgian waffles always creates a big controversy. Belgian waffles started the 64 World's Fair. No, they first at the 62 fair, but this was a much heavier, denser type of waffle. Just like we have Chicago pizza, New York pizza, and crappy LA pizza, you had different types of waffles depending on which part of Belgium you were in. So the family that had the Belgian waffle stand here had a denser one. The New York one was a lighter one and took off, with much more fame. But I have plenty of pictures of people with a Belgian waffle with strawberries and whipped cream enjoying it out here at Seattle as well. Night view, the International Fountain. It was a program that the lights would change colors and change patterns based on music done with the punch tape system. Building the Union 76 Skyway. The system was later moved, and I believe is still in use at the county fair. Just a shot of the grounds. More of the light fixtures. Chevron building in the background. Automatic, that was a big thing. You could get food out of machines. This was a real big thing. I've got some pictures of that. You could go and buy a sandwich in a machine. That was just, wow, man, that's space age. That's just George Jetson. People were they were enamored. And the fact that in one machine you would have you could get a hot sandwich, and in the next one you had a cold ice cream. Wow, I mean, it was just heaven for everybody going on to the automatic food machines. Gas pavilion, they had torches up at the top that went 12 of them around in a circle, and every hour they would ignite one of the torches with this explosive bang to draw your attention to the pavilion. Today, in the day of what fuel prices are, everything today, you would not think about burning fuel like that just for a giant clock. They also had a giant flame up at the top of the Space Needle, things you wouldn't do today. But down below, they were showing you how gas could feed your industry, cool your home, heat your home, all sorts of things. Here's that Ferris wheel again. You can see how different in design it is from the Ferris wheel you've seen at countless state fairs. Everybody's lining up. This is out on the street side crowd waiting to go in at the East Gate here. Up at the top, the Space Needle looking down at the arena. Shot like this you can't get today, really, because this arena is still there. The other buildings, they're pretty well gone. But this whole area, open air here, is all enclosed in plexiglass now, so people don't throw themselves or throw objects off the side. But this came up to basically not even quite shoulder height at the fair. And I've got some pictures. I got one in my book of a lady near the edge looking absolutely terrified, and the wind is blowing. It was just a thing you're not going to see for public safety today. And down below the Coliseum, giant molecule up above rotated around, and that's one of the molecules in fuel. Looking over towards the downtown, you can see a giant 62 degrees there. I was on a talk the other day. People were talking about ticker tape displays and news and that. This again is cutting edge technology for 1962 to be able to display things on a scrolling message board. Looking down at the Science Center, this real busy area. This is the Gateway Amusement Area. Super popular part of the park. Made a tremendous amount of money for everybody that was involved in it. The round ride off to the right was called a Rotor. Bill Gates has said that was one of his favorite rides. That and the Wild Mouse ride that is also here. But a lot of these rides were brought over from Europe that they had been built for different European amusement parks, picked up lock, stock, and barrel and just dropped down here at the Gateway. It was so popular that when the fair closed, the Gateway stayed in operation for a number of years, became, I think, known as Fun Forest, and unfortunately was decimated not too many years ago, half a dozen or so, maybe 6, 8 years ago, to make way for expansion of the Chuli Glass Museum. But this was a very long running remnant of the fair, just like La Ronde is still running up in Montreal as a remnant of Expo 67. Just again, views tourists would take of this area. Marching band coming across the ground. If you go see it happen at the World's Fair, they're marching at the very end, and Elvis comes and leads the band across the ground. They also had other marching bands, just like most World's Fairs will do. They invite a group, high school kids, to come in and march at the fair, knowing that all their relatives will come and buy a ticket for the fair. So very popular to have free entertainment marching around the grounds. Union 76 Skyway here. They designed that famous ball. If you live out here on the West Coast, you've seen the Union 76 balls atop the gas stations. And it was designed in the first place it was unveiled was the 62 World's Fair. Back in the days when antenna toppers became popular, back I think it was probably the 80s, and everybody was buying these little foam rubber balls to stick in your antenna. 76 antenna balls are probably on 25% of the cars around here in LA for a period of time. But that's where they first came to be, Seattle. Looking up at the Space Needle before they added the restaurant onto the, or the banquet hall onto the lower level. Nice, clean, elegant design. All done in a year. It's just absolutely amazing. We'll just keep, again, we're just hopping all over the place, left and right, down, looking again at the Gateway Amusement Area. And now we're looking back up just to balance it out. I got a kick out of this one, very artistic picture. The water in the space, the U.S. Science Exhibit area, and catching the Space Needle. The mural down below. The international area here, you had, again, these are very cheaply built buildings. They were actually basically just a concrete base, plywood walls, and a roof. And then each of the shop owners would, just like with the International Pavilions, they put their own facade on it. So here you had a Paris restaurant. I don't think there's much that you can see as far as what they were serving or anything in there. There's a menu, but it's really kind of hard to make out. But then down below you had shop things, gifts from Germany, and then down over here we have one coming in from Greece. So all sorts of international things that were sold there, Hummels and stone and onyx figures, and just all sorts of things. Thailand Pavilion, again, free rent for the international exhibits. Some of them were very plain. This had a very nice ornate design, which the design will look familiar to people from 64 or Expo 67, where they built the entire actual buildings for the fair. And speaking of 64, they had an exhibit here. Hostess here. You know, it's interesting to think that they were trying to get people interested, not just in thinking about coming to visit at the fair, but also to come and exhibit at the 64 fair. So they had a site plan up here on the right-hand side, and they had one of the early models under the plastic dome here. Early design of the logo here, you can see the Unisphere with the orbital rings going around it, the circular dots and flying satellites. but they had brochures that they would pass out, and they had a VIP function that they would invite people to come to as guests of the World's Fair Corporation and try to get them to come out and exhibit in New York. It's interesting if you, I don't know, we'll show too much in this one as we go through the YouTube or the Zoom resolution. I can see this much better on the actual picture in my, on my computer. But they had names on all these pavilions, which was very fanciful and very hopeful because all these international countries had not agreed to participate. But if you put names on them and tell people, I've still got an extra one here, you might want to sign up real quick. It's kind of a thing to get people to jump on a bandwagon that's going out of town. So one of the first employees of the 64 fair, she's out there giving the thing. Again, I'd like to know where that model went. And you can see some of the buildings on it. Back downtown, Trader Vic's, the Benjamin Franklin Hotel here. Again, this is taken from the Union 76 Sky Ride going over the Gateway. In the background, you had a number of amusement park type rides. They put you in a car, take you to a fun house or that sort of thing. But it was a very big thing to be spun around. They had octopus rides, rotor rides, the Calypso ride. Many of the rides spun you around. Down here were games of chance, throw the ball, knock off the milk can off the thing, or break a dart, use a dart, break a balloon. We'll see some of the prizes from that. Here's the fountain, people behaving themselves at this point in time, not going out into it. After the fair, some of the buildings gone, but some of them lasted for a period of time. GE did not have the Carousel of Progress, but they had a whole big thing on the world of electric living. With hydroelectric being such a big thing in the Midwest, there were displays of all the power dams and the grids and how electricity was a reliable and non-polluting source of energy. So GE went all out with the House of Electric Living, electric appliances, electric lights, electric stereos, everything that you could get in there, including electric, air conditioning, which was not super needed in Seattle, but people that were coming from other areas got a kick out of it. Another one I just restored this week. This is Denmark Day, and again, they're all in the Danish costumes coming on in. And this is again a massive marketing thing. All the people that you have from Danish American communities all throughout the Pacific Northwest come in for the day. We'll let you in for free if you dress up in costume. But, oh, Mom, your brother, they've got to buy a ticket. Come on in and watch the parade. Again, looking down, I got a kick out of this thing at the parking lot here. Can you imagine if you decided you wanted to go home early, how long it was going to take your car if you were, say, down here at the bottom of the thing? Because you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars behind you. So it definitely would take a while to get cars in and out of there. But the fair did not operate the parking lots, unlike at 64 fair, they were operated by them. These were all done by local businesses, and you can see that these guys are absolute masters in space management. Seeing this? Just one of the signs going up, the World of Art, a very nice art display that they have. They put out a very nice catalog of what was done. And you can see they had different types of art. They had art since 1950 of the USA and international. They had Indian art, ancient East art, just a whole great collection of it. One of the things that they did for 62 fair was they used some existing buildings on site. They also built newer ones. This was going to be a concert center. It was called the Playhouse. That was one of the big things that they wanted to do is they had a opera house for Seattle that was really worn out. Terrible, horrible acoustics, uncomfortable seating, sight lines, and all that. The city on its own didn't have the money just to go and build a new facility. But if you could do it as part of the World's Fair, gets the state to throw in money, the feds to throw in some money, and now you could build a facility which is still in use today. So it really gave tremendous life and planning They had a lot of foresight to make Seattle Center into a vibrant area. Again, the international exhibits, you can see in this particular case how the exhibits don't even go all the way up to the roof. I mean, just plywood walls, exhibits inside, but it was great. It let you come in. There were some very small displays from very small countries that could never have afforded to build their own elaborate pavilion, but this gave them equal footing with their neighbors next door. Now, some did build their own pavilion buildings. This is Yugoslavia, which was way, way off the path for anybody in the United States at this point in time. It was a very interesting thing that they built. This was a building actually built in Yugoslavia out of native materials, built over here and put together. And it's again why, you know, tourists weren't going to Yugoslavia. Well, this was built by the Yugoslavian Export Association, and inside there were all sorts of displays of things you could buy and bring over here from Yugoslavia. And if we're not currently making it, we have a very versatile labor force. What would you like us to make for you? So again, as most World's Fairs are, they're done by industry to attract business. I got a kick out of this Jeep here. It's a Willys Jeep, the design of World War II type thing, but with a very different paint style. And I've always tried to figure out, painting the Jeep is one thing, getting an awning for it is another, but where on earth do you go to get bright red tires? I have no idea why this thing was painted in this color. It's outside the Hawaiian Pavilion, but it's a genuine Willys Jeep. And I pray I never see one of these pull up to one of the traffic accidents I'm working at. I'll think I'm having hallucinations. Down below, again, you can see some of the food machines. I have no idea why this banner is covering a part of the signs. Maybe the machines are out of order that day. But it was a big innovation for 62. The mural in 62 did not have the stage area in front of it that they later added on, but beautiful piece of artwork. Thousands and thousands of pieces of glass inlaid into the concrete. And really, when you're there in person, the sun really pops off it and shines. It's really, and the colors look just as vibrant today as they did back then. Bell System went way out to have a giant exhibit. Again, I mentioned touch-tone telephones are in there. They would have you race, one person on a touch-tone phone and one person on a dial phone, and would tell you to dial your home phone number, go. And it took people a little getting used to the touch-tone phone. It's something we all take for granted today, but people were fumbling around. But after they did it once or twice, there was no way that the dial phone could beat anybody, just because of the time that you take it, especially if you had a zero in your dial phone and waiting for it to rotate all the way back. Man, you were just going right through that touch-tone phone. There is a very good film, Calling Century 21. You can find it on YouTube, that the Bell System did about the World's Fair. Thoroughly recommended to people. It's not just about the Bell System exhibit, but has some really great views of the fair. And again, it's called Calling Century 21. IBM also had a very impressive pavilion telling people about computers. Now, this was well before the days of PCs, but now they're starting to use computers for things like airline reservations. They're starting to use computers for things that directly affect you, the public. So there's a whole thing inside on how logic works, and a maze that if you get to this point, you turn left, this happens, you turn right, that happens, and here's how computers make decisions. So it was very well remembered. After the fair, the exhibits were taken out, and this was turned into a video game arcade. So it was used for pinball games and other things like that for years. Just a nice view of the fairgrounds. Very, very beautiful day. Sermons from Science, we saw it before it being built, and it came up with you could never have told when we saw that little wooden sign what it was going to look like, but it came out to a very impressive looking building. And this is the sort of thing I get a real kick out of. We'll zoom in on this a little here. If you go in, it is the House of Flowers. And you could go and you could buy flowers. You can see some nice lilies and other roses and all that sort of thing. They were not so much thinking you're going to go and buy a potted lily and walk around with it for the day. the day that you're at the fair. But look up here, Teleflora. You could wire flowers. You could go here, and this was really new in 1962, that you could go here, look at this flower here, and say, "Oh, I want that," and then the lady, nice lady in the booth, would get on her phone, call into the central reservation system, and say, "I need an A27 sent to this address." That would go out to a florist back home in Baldwin, New York, and 2 hours later, somebody's dropping one of these off at your mom's house. So flowers done by wire was a real big thing, and up here you can see at the top live wire flowers. So again, cutting edge technology. Circus Berlin, $1 for adults, 50 cents for children, and it was again a big thing. This calliope actually played, and they would take it around the fairgrounds to attract people, sort of like the Pied Piper, following me back to the circus. And here you can see just how popular the fair got at times. Here's the marching band trying to make way as one of the trams going around is going the opposite direction. People just milling everywhere. It was a very successful fair, made a profit, got its attendance goals in, and succeeded in its plans to leave a vibrant park in its place. Most people did not get to go here to Club 21. This was a private membership club. This is where the Hoi Polloi of Seattle Society would spend money to get into the club. And it came with a certain, it's just like Club 33 at Disneyland, if you're familiar with it. Got you into the fairground, but also got you admission for a certain number of your guests. So if you were a businessman or businesswoman, and they did start actually mentioning businesswomen at the time, the initial brochures were about businessmen, and I think some businesswomen objected, particularly because a woman is very instrumental in getting Century 21 built in the first place. And they started becoming a little bit more open-minded. But you could come in here, entertain guests in a very nice restaurant, and then send them off into the fairgrounds as your guest for the day, and hope they would remember how well you had treated them and come in and continue to do business with them. This is interesting. Eastgate admission. We're going to zoom in here. We're going to look at the prices here. So to go to the fair for the day was $2. For a child, $1, and servicemen in uniform, 75 cents. But what's interesting here is look at this line. 25-cent Alweg surcharge, $2 total adding up. Every single person that went to the World's Fair paid a quarter for the monorail, whether they wanted it or not. This was something where they had really, really wanted the monorail. They had seen it over in Germany. It was, again, going to be touted as the modern transportation system, was going to revolutionize all mass transit in the United States. And Seattle was determined to build it and have it there. The Alweg people said, "Hey, we'd be glad to build it, but we just can't afford to do it." So this was the compromise they came up with. Excuse me one second. 25 cents if you went through the gate, whether you rode it or not, and then if you went to ride on it, excuse me, you got to pay for a ticket as well. So amazing way that you charged it. But $2, what a deal, huh? Berlin was divided, had the Berlin Wall. It was obviously being a big political situation. So again, they could have a display out here, very economical, the way it was built. And it was a popular display trying to bring to attention the plight of the people living in the divided city. More of the flowers of the world, we will mail anywhere. So they would get you those flowers, or you could buy them, you could carry them around if you wanted to. But I don't think I've come across any pictures of people carrying a bouquet around. Republic of Korea, again, we are in political days. So this is not South Korea, because they officially don't recognize North Korea exists. Just like we're going to see the Republic of China, which is the Taiwan, because the mainland China did not exist to them. United Arab Republic, attempt to take Egypt and some of the other neighboring countries and put them together. The alliance fell apart just before the fair began. So they continued to operate with the name on it, but some of the other nations Egypt did continue to participate, the others did not show. There was a carillon that you could play on a tape so it would entertain people, or guest performers could come in and entertain. And here is the woman sitting down at the carillon, and I have pictures of some of the bells and stuff for that. And here's where I mentioned the tiniest of nations, San Marino, what's it called, a principality was here. Their big thing and how they survive is selling postage stamps. So you could come in here and they had a whole display about the country, and you could buy San Marino postage stamps. This was one of the smaller displays there, smaller nations. But again, you could do it pretty economical. They didn't even put a facade on this one. Probably couldn't afford it. So just open air, come on in, no air conditioning, no roof to it, but we have some signs. And off to the side here in this little area here, you can see it says Philately, I believe. Yep, so you can come over here and there's a person behind here that will sell you any of our stamps. Again, more is the international area. The bounty, as I mentioned before, the crew would all dress up and entertain people on board. So they came here and they're playing an accordion, singing sea chanties, and having a great time. So what a shame the ship was lost. But I imagine it was a tremendous adventure for the crew that just took this thing around and entertained people. United Nations, again, a relatively new organization back in '62. An exhibit inside talking about what the goals were, and also things like UNICEF and some of the committees that were established by the United Nations. A very late addition to the fair, so late it didn't appear in the guidebook. Morocco, they put up a tea tent outside. It's right next to the Kobe Japan Friendship Bell. But somebody at the last proverbial minute decided I needed to get in on this and put it together. And there was an empty piece of ground. And from the Fair Corporation people, okay, I can't charge you rent for it. But first of all, it goes and it fills up the empty piece of ground. But I can charge you a fee to sell food in there. So if people went in and they would buy stuff at the tea tent, the Fair Corporation got cents on the dollar for their food sales. And they're allowed to charge that under the BIE rules. So they were more than happy to cram them in at the proverbial 23rd and a half hour. Another one of the smaller exhibits, we'll zoom in on this one here. Looks like a souvenir stand at first, but it's actually the American Institute of Architects. And inside here is, again, if you're coming to build a building over in the Seattle area, because we're exploding, with this great new modern airport, we revitalized our port. We have a great rail service into town, but you're going to need a headquarters building. So why not come and talk to some of our award-winning architects? We built this fair, and now we can go and build something for you. So kind of an interesting little exhibit. And you saw all sorts of silly things. This guy will zoom in just a little bit on him. He's doing giant soap bubbles. So he's up on the roof and he's trying to get your attention. And down below, you could go and buy one of these giant soap bubble wands. Over in the background, you can see we have a space capsule going on because, again, space is such a big thing. Down below, it's just a souvenir stand. Had absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with the space capsule. It was just attention-getting. Over here, C&H Sugar, they had a display. Right below, you can see blue. That's the blue and orange banner for the '64 World's Fair exhibit. So that was part of the beauty of the fair. There was, just silliness and stuff all over the place. Something to see everywhere you looked. One of the better shots of Paul Bunyan, and this lady is up here cutting the piece of the cake. Van de Kamp's was a big bakery out here at the West at the time. When I first got to LA, there were Van de Kamp restaurants all over the place. But you would come down below and you'd say, I want a slice of birthday cake. And she would go up and cut it down and put it in a little box for you, and you could eat it or take it home. If only the '64 fair people had kept, the New York folks had kept their Sky Streak elevator going. Back then, of course, smoking was the big thing you did if you were cool and everything. So you can come here to the stand here, and you can get Kent cigarettes with the famous micronite filter, Pall Mall. But one of the things this stand did was they had cigarette tobacco products from around the world. So if you had always had a desire that you had to try a British cigarette or a German cigar or whatever, you could buy it here. Or if you were from, one of the countries and you came here and you didn't want a harsh American cigarette and you wanted to pack of genuine flavors from home, you could go and get that. You're not likely to see too many tobacco stores at fairs. Mentioned the art exhibit. This was the art since in the U.S. since 1950s area. But this might be art. This might be the international 50s since 50s area. But again, they did a really nice catalog of all these pieces. This one actually moved and had motors that rotated things around. It was called a Metamatic. One of the big things over at Show Street, they had lots of topless type things or near topless type things to try to lure people in. There was a constant thing of people getting upset, causing the police to raid the fairgrounds. They'd come and shut down a show. But a lot of it was the nudge, nudge, wink, wink, like, gee, I would hate to be there rating your show at 8:15 tonight. I would really hate to be there then, at 8:15, obviously the gals would all be wearing the full costumes. At 8:30 when the cops left, they'd go back to the regular show. But in this particular one, the whole idea was you could go backstage USA and you could see the stage door here and you could see all these beautiful young ladies getting ready to do their stage show as they put on their makeup and took off their street clothes and put on their performance clothes. If you like beer, the Hofbrau House was a great spot to go to, but I think the sign shows up here. Positively, no minors allowed, exception on Sunday. And that's because on Sunday, the local blue laws didn't allow them to serve beer. So during the week, adults would go in and get your beer and sausage. On Sundays, you could bring the kids in to get a Coke and sausage. So just interesting to see how things have changed as far as that. We're inside the Berlin exhibit showing how it's a city surrounded by the communists, but airlines bring stuff into and out of Berlin. So again, we do have industries, we do have things we can contribute. Please visit us. But please realize that there are some train routes, but there are a lot of plane routes into Berlin. Construction, the Safeco insurance kiosk. This was the main insurance or the main information area to go get the plans for the fair, maps, tour guides, that sort of thing. In the back, again, the bank facade going up. Downtown, very high-end department store. Union 76 Skyride. Again, the very late edition of the Morocco T-tent next to the Kobe Seattle Friendship Bell. This structure, the T-tent's long, long gone, but the Friendship Bell is still there in the park today. And Kobe, Japan, they had the bell outside for that exhibit, but they also had inside the Japan Pavilion this model of the city showing you what the large port they had and how the entire city was crammed between the ocean and the formidable mountains behind. But it was trying to say the port was this giant opportunity to ship your stuff between Japan and the United States. Whether it was going to Japan or coming from Japan, they wanted to be your port of entry for it. The Denali Space Age Theater showed travel films of the Pacific Northwest. Their claim to fame here was that there were no straight lines in the building. And if you look over here, you can see even the doorway behind the man is curved. This is all done with plywood that was made into shapes. They got it wet, bent it under pressure, nailed it into forms, and then covered it over with a layer of concrete. Mentioned the games of chance. I just restored this one early this week. The sailors obviously had a knack for winning. These, believe it or not, are the medium-sized prizes. There's other ones that I've got pictures of the guys carrying the giant prizes, and That was the problem. If you won one of these things that's, say at 10 in the morning, and now you had to carry it around to the day. But I imagine these guys could use it to their advantage by finding some pretty young girl that would like to have a pink or purple or whatever dog and start chatting up a conversation with them. But I've got some pictures of people carrying stuffed animals just about as big as they are. So kind of got a kick out of it. Again, just view the fair. People enjoying the cotton candy. There was a big cotton candy spot right behind them. Back to the gas pavilion. She's just waiting for Dad to get done looking at the compressors. Wax Museum, the Walters Wax Museum, a big thing for 64 fair. They had a big wax museum here. Their whole thing was trying to come up with as many scantily clad women as possible to get by the censors. IBM, we're at the logic game. Again, they would tell you there was a logical way to find your way in and out of this maze. And at the end of it, they would ask, did you realize that it was whatever the pattern was, left, left, right, left, or whatever it was, and that computers are logical, they could follow this very quickly. And now look at the fountain here. You can see that people were just not paying attention to the signs that are telling them to stay out of it. They've climbed down, they're sitting on the edge of it. I've got others of kids sticking their hands out in the water. So during the day, at times when it got hot and people went out there, they were forced to dial the fountain back and not put it through its full paces because they didn't want anybody, frankly, getting hurt on it. And these rocks were very, very sharp. It was never meant to be a participatory sport. Simon Barbecue, matter of fact, I owe the guy that, the fellow that ran this restaurant is still alive and didn't have too many pictures of it, and his family is trying to put together something for him. So I got to remember this week to get back and send him some pictures. But they, you can see they had wood out here, and it was an actual wood-burning barbecue restaurant, and it was something he was hoping to do a chain of them around, and I gathered the chain didn't come across. But the fellow that ran this 60-something years later is still with us. This is again is Show Street, and you can see they're going on trying to show you how daring it is. Have you seen Stella, a daring show? Off to the right, Gracie Hansen's Paradise, all sorts of different things that were done inside here. The Christian Science Pavilion, sort of a quiet sort of design, another one I just got done this week. The fountain again, you can see they try to keep people out. Look at the big sign there, danger, keep out of fountain. But people on a hot day, they just climbed over and went into it. Here's, I mentioned the Carillon. It was a temporary structure built for the fair, but I think it had 62 bells in it to go for the 62 fair, and it could again perform electronically through a tape or have guest performers down below. And nighttime, I got a kick out of these space age lights up here. Total silliness. They didn't provide anything other than eye candy to look at. But a number of those stayed on the World's Fair site for quite a few years until they finally were victims of storms or just wear and tear. Another cake, not as big as Paul Bunyan's, but this is the 60th anniversary of the American Automobile Association. So the World's Fair band is out here getting ready to perform. They had a big event bringing people in from all around that were involved with the Auto Club. And after the fellow finished his speech, everybody got a piece of Auto Club cake. So it's hard to think that how long the Auto Club's been around now, isn't it? Wow, that means it's 120 years old. That's kind of remarkable. And again, bringing the rides from Europe, the kids don't care if it wasn't invented here. They're just going to have a great time. It's getting chilly at night. Probably the fog is rolling in, but they're just going to have fun riding their motor scooter around in the gateway area. Again, the fountain lit up quite a few different colors at night. The Architects Pavilion again. This is inside the U.S. Science Exhibit, and again, I've looked at this particular picture in a better copy, and I forget what particular display this is here. But again, very scientific oriented displays, not done with a lot of comedy or humor like you might have done today, but people ate it up, going in and trying to learn, you know, displays on how photosynthesis works, how a telescope works. I mean, just all sorts of different items, very popular. Another one I finished this week, 1 million silver dollars, 30 tons of it. And this was done by a company that built chicken coops. Balin Manufacturing Company of Columbus, Nebraska. And they wanted to show that their chicken coops were so strong that they could hold 30 tons of it. So rather than just sticking 30 tons of anything in there, some guy had the brilliant idea that the United States Mint was sitting on all these silver dollars that they didn't want anymore because nobody was using silver dollars in 1962. They were too heavy to carry in your pocket. This was before the silver craze took hold. So they had bags and bags and bags and bags of silver dollars at the mint. So this guy made the deal, hey, I'll rent them from you, and I'll sell them at the fair, and any of the ones that I don't have, you'll take back, won't you? So they did a big thing where they did a convoy across the United States, $1 million on its way to the 1962 World's Fair, stopping at cities all the way across the United States where you could go and look at part of the $1 million. They got out here and they put them on display, and up above you can see there's a sign, take home an official fair medallion. They were not silver dollars, but you could also get a silver dollar. So kind of amazing. You know, if you went, you look at this, you would never ever think, oh, I gotta go and get myself a chicken coop. But all the way around the area, the displays on how they could build uh, corn silos for your barn, all sorts of things that they were very good on metalworking. Nice view of GE at night, the electric pavilion going around. And this one people might get a kick out of. The monorail is fun to look at, but look down below. Mold-O-Rama. All of us that had to have our famous, drop your quarter into the slot, let the machine press and ooze and make that wonderful smelling plastic that they had. And out here, they had you could get your own little space needle made in wax and take it home. So it's just great to see the machine sitting out there. And again, if you zoom in on it, go down here below, you can see the machine, and it's only 25 cents. So, boy, does that bring back memories of watching those things go and having fun with them. Mention expensive restaurants. This is up at the top of the Space Needle. Very innovative thing to have a rotating restaurant. What was interesting was if we look at the table, I think it shows up here. Table down at the very bottom, table 41. They had to do a whole new thing of training the waitresses on remembering where the tables were at any point in time, because they could come out here, I'll go back to it, come out here, take your order, go back to the kitchen and place it. And if they came back here, you weren't here anymore. You were further down the aisle. So they had, acquaint people with, okay, if I come out of here, table 41 has gone here. At the beginning, it was sort of confusing, but over time, they got to realize, how fast the thing would go. And, if I came out here, it's not going to be here, but I've been gone 5 minutes. I'll come out the door over here from the kitchen. But a very nice, very elegant restaurant, and still there today. It's been remodeled and modernized, and still there. Albert Fisher took that picture. In this one, Albert was the director of television and radio for the fair, and the VIPs coming into town. Here's Vice President Nixon coming in, and one of the fellow here is one of the leaders of the fair. Long line here for the Ford exhibit, all waiting to get in for a simulated trip through outer space. The long line made Ford realize they needed to do something for the 64 World's Fair. Disney also realized they needed to do something for the long line. And that's where they put the international villages in for showing where Ford cars are sold and made around the world, but to entertain people in air-conditioned comfort rather than stand out in the sun. Back in Show Street again, Gracie Hansen had this show here in Night in Paradise. Up at the top, there's a bite out of the apple. It's supposed to be Adam and Eve, and Eve's taking the bite of the apple, and you're going to see all their forbidden fruit inside. Gracie Hansen was a local character, as they say, that put the show together, and it was very, very popular. And if you see pictures of it, some amazing gowns and very big in a Las Vegas showgirl type of outfit. Here's the barbecue restaurant down below, the backstage restaurant or show to go in, and Gracie in the background. And you can see right in the background the city of Seattle, just outside the fairgrounds. Power lines running by, buildings right at the edge of it. So that's because this whole area used to be the city of Seattle, and they had raised other buildings just like these for the fairgrounds. And that was something, again, people are complaining about still today, how they displace families for commerce. Over at the fountain area, we saw some of these concrete things being built before. Stroller that would look very much at home at Disneyland at that period of time, probably from the exact same company. Finish your cotton candy before you get on the monorail, please. Up at the top of the Space Needle, I went and I pulled this picture up on Google Earth. My goodness, how it's changed. You know, you can see the train yards here and everything, and it's just changed tremendously. Ford exhibit. This after the fair, they sold the tent, and it became the home to a boat dealer about 30 miles or so outside of Seattle for years and years and years, and it finally wore out and has been torn down, but it is reused for years as a boat showroom. Up at the grounds of the Spanish Village, that's the building down below, flamenco dancers and that sort of thing. This building here used as a press building, and again, an old building that was not allowed to be torn down, part of the grounds. Mentioned a lot of rides were brought in from Europe, so the Calypso ride spinning around is another one in the background. All these things plopped into place and were super, super popular. Chungking, they were basically selling Chinese food in a can at that point in time. You could go and buy, you got like 2 cans that were held together by a piece of tape. One can had dry noodles in it, and the other can had the vegetables and meat that you would heat up. And Chungking was trying to see whether or not they could expand out to restaurants. So you had 7 varieties of dinners, buffet style, and you just went around the corner. Very popular here. They tried it again at the 64 fair. They had it at Freedom Land, but for whatever reason, they never went wide with it. In a day today where you have all your Panda Express and Payways and other chain Chinese restaurants, it's interesting to think if these guys had pushed a little harder, they could have monopolized that business. Downtown, monorail station, the original one, not there anymore. And just some views of the area. More of the international shops. The Sculpture Garden and the First National Bank again. Fiesta Restaurant, a middle of the range restaurant, not a snack bar, but if you look at the sign, you can just make out it says cocktail room. So very, very popular, especially in the evenings. People could come out. They had shows. If you had a show going to the Opera House or anything, come out here, go to dinner, walk across the grounds, go to the show. People lined up for the Space Needle. Flight to Mars, a typical funhouse ride that lasted for years. It was there a good 20, 30 years after the fair ended as part of the Fun Forest that took over the Gateway area. So real sign of Seattle for years and years. Mentioned hydro being a big thing. This was the electric power industry. Over on the left, a recreation of the water coming over the spillways of the dam. And down below, a giant 3-dimensional map of all the power facilities across the state. Food, again, I mentioned all types of different food. Just like in Denmark, you can get a Danish frank. And I can't not think, I've not been to Denmark. I've been to the other Scandinavian countries. I've got to go and get myself a Danish frank one of these days. My daughter is, she's on a cruise now, and she was in Denmark and going back to Denmark, I'm going to have to get in touch with her and ask her to get me a picture of a Danish franc to see if they really exist or if these guys are just playing games with us. But other stuff you can get, let's zoom in here a little bit. Krusteaz fresh hot donuts, only 19 cents. Right next to it, Orange Julius, a devilish good drink. I don't think they're still using that particular slogan. But again, all sorts of different things you could go and pick up and have fun at the fair. And the snack machines. So here, boy, this is, of course, cigarettes, big thing. You could go and get a cigarette. On one side, candy, next to it, cigarettes. You had all the essentials of life. You had hot drinks, cold drinks, hot food, cold food, more hot food. You could get a milkshake or a frozen shake, I guess, and ice cream. And off to the side, the very, very essential change machine. And that was a big thing for 1962, that you stick a dollar bill in a change machine and that would drop quarters. So they made a big thing out of the fact that this was totally automated. They didn't have to have an attendant giving you quarters, but there were stories that kids would just love to go and just stick the dollar bill in there to have the quarters come out, and as long as we got the quarters to add, now we can go get an ice cream. But again, stuff you take for granted today, a dollar bill changer, people don't think twice about it. 62, cutting edge. Safeco, again, we saw it being built. Just one for the folks in the area. You would not recognize any of this today for people that, Randy, you probably flew into SeaTac many, many times. It probably didn't look anything like this, did it?
No, I can remember seeing SeaTac when I was a kid, but that building is actually still in there somewhere. It's just been, surrounded by new structures.
Yeah, and you don't get parked right up front.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so yeah, but that was a new airport at the time. So Hofbrau House, again, mentioned, don't go in there on a Sunday, kids. More souvenirs. One of the things I have in my book is that you could buy a live turtle at the fair, and you could carry that around for the day, or they would actually take the turtle, put it in a box with some moisture and stuff for it to eat, and they would mail the turtle to your friends. So I don't know how many of those turtles made it through the mail, but the thought of going and buying a turtle, put it into a box and dropping it in a mailbox, kind of barbaric. But they had that was one of the things you could do at the fair. Back downtown, Madame Tussauds Wax Museum, British Bobby standing outside Gloria Inn. The tram that took you around, again, they had that. They had the little electric cab and they had pedicabs. Back downtown. Again, sometimes it's kind of fun. I don't know if it was showing the resolution you folks can see, but you can look over here. Jean Hall, police partner appearance. Our beautiful new front will be completed soon. So, yeah, I just get a kick out of picking up all the little things here, the style of cars, and off to the right, Ritz Crackers making a delivery. IBM again. Railroad transport, trains were going out, but they were going out fighting, kicking, and screaming. Yeah, that the highways were big, airplanes were big, but we still have a lot of rail lines that run around, and you come and ship your stuff with us. Again, more of a zoom in on this one. Little snack bar here, basically the same sort of thing we'd have in New York at the brass rail, but without the balloons. So you can get your coffee, hot dogs, hamburgers, cheeseburgers, ice cream cones, French fries, all that sort of stuff. Downtown at the monorail station, as you came into town, you could get visitor information, and they had a little kiosk there. They could actually find you a hotel room. If you were silly enough to come to Seattle without a hotel reservation for the days of the fair, you were probably going to be staying way, way out of town because it basically sold out everything around. And getting down near the end of these, Roy Rogers came to town. This was another one that Albert Fisher took. People were very, very complimentary on Roy's appearance. He and Dale Evans came to the fair. And if you work in the entertainment business, you know that most celebrities are spoiled snots and better. I always told people when I worked at the studio, stay away from the talent. They're not nice. Well, Roy and Dale were evidently so nice and so talking to people that the producer had to tell them, hey, we got to get this show back on schedule because they spent as much time as their fans wanted to go with them. Albert was very, very complimentary about, Roy just, walking up to people, talking to people, and just being one of the gang, and the director having to come and corral him back. So I'll end with that on a happy note here. Stop to share and take a look at some of the comments here. So and then memories or anything that people want to throw in, just feel free to add here. Okay, everybody's saying hey, 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 back and forth, all waving at each other. So Carolyn, you enjoyed DCA, California, Disneyland and DCA, huh?
Yeah, I did actually. It was a really long day, but yeah, we were there at rope drop and we left at about 11:15 after the parade, Main Street parade ended.
Yeah, it's the electrical parade is still to me one of the best things Disney ever did. I mean, Carol and I were there a couple of years ago when they brought it back, and we were there with our friend Stacia. And as soon as you hear that music come up, the first opening notes of it is like, oh wow, I'm a kid again, and it's just a great parade. So we stayed there. We were there that night as they're pushing you out the door, go home, go home. And it's still a great way to do it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. Each of the I didn't realize this the first time because I thought I'd never forget that music, but it's been a few years, and so it started up again. But a lot of the we were like in the first row on the street, so we could hear it all.
That's great. Just reading the comments, Harold mentioned the 62 stamp is a 4-cent stamp. It's just we're getting ready for the postage prices to go up again and everything. And I collect stamps, and I look back. It's amazing. They stayed at 4 cents forever. They were 4 cents, and then and now they'll go to 5. And as long as we got 5, we'll go to 7. What happened? I mean, now it's just insane. But back then I could afford stamp collecting. Today you get a plate block or something of stamps, and you're at a couple bucks. Just throw in the book. So I actually stopped collecting stamps about maybe 10, 15 years ago. Because I just couldn't, and they were putting out so many of them. It got to be real expensive.
Well, Bill, I'm still collecting, but yeah, it's very expensive because a lot of times now they're playing this game that you can't just go buy one stamp or a plate block or even a strip of 2 or 3, of 5 stamps across the top. You have to buy the whole sheet in many cases, not all cases, but a lot of the special stamps that are coming out, you've got to buy the whole sheet and to get one stamp.
Yeah, that's what it came down to with me too, Brock. Because I was collecting not just stamps. I had to get the stamp, then I decided I needed plate blocks, and I was also collecting first day covers. And I have first day covers going back, to when I started collecting in the 50s. The first day cover, when you first came out for a 4-cent stamp, you were paying maybe 80 cents or something for a first day cover. Now all of a sudden they get up to $5 or something for a cover. It's like I can't do that anymore. So, and I've got. Well, looking over it, I got a cabinet just crammed this stuff. I got to sort out and get rid of it before I die, so Carol and the kids don't have to deal with it. But I really enjoyed collecting stamps. I had an uncle, the same uncle that got me into photography, got me into stamps. And now that I think about it, Uncle Steve was a real pusher. But he collected stamps in a big way, and he gave me some really, really great stamps and helped me out tremendously with my collection. And I look at them from time to time, remembering different events I got them at, and I found them really great for history. I mean, I remember getting stamps. They had a set of stamps for 3 cents or so back in the 40s of famous Americans, and I didn't have any idea who some of these people were. And you get it, and I go to the library and look them up and everything. So, do you specialize in any particular type, Rock?
Just United States stamps, but it's even complicated now because they're doing this thing where they're issuing a commemorative stamp both in the used to be known as perforated. It's now serpentine die cut, they call it, but where you can pull the individual stamp off by itself. And they're also putting out a limited amount of no die cuts. In other words, it's sort of like if you look back in the Farley collection stuff of the early US, where you had these stamps that you would cut with scissors. they're doing it for a reason for artistic people who want to put them in frames, but it's become a collectible because it's a very limited number of them. And so much so that it's hard to get in and even get some, and you have to buy a whole, it's only sold in the press sheet. So you're talking about 10 sheets of stamps or 8 sheets of stamps or whatever it might be in that press sheet. And that's a fortune just if you can get it. It's actually cheaper to go online to eBay and pick it up. Because I try to collect, okay, here's the perforate or the serpentine die cut. Here is the non-cut or the imperforate stamp. So I have a complete collection, but it's cheaper to go and pay a premium to get the stamp. But what are you going to do with all those extras? Unless I don't want to go on eBay and try to sell them. So yeah, it's getting tough.
I had no idea. I used to get stamp collector magazines and newspapers, and I just dropped all that a number of years ago. I had no idea they were even doing that. I have a pretty good collection of United States stamps and also United Nations. And my dad worked for a Japanese shipping company, and he would bring home stamps from his office, big bags full, most of them from Japan, as they were mailing letters from the home office over to New York. But then, they would send stuff from all the other countries that his company shipped stuff to. So I ended up with all these stamps from, Europe. And I mean, for the 60s, I have a large collection. They're all pretty much used, the international stuff. But I used to sit there with the things you remember, sitting down at the kitchen table with my dad, going through them, and I'd come across some language I had never heard of before, and oh my God, that's Finnish for Finland, I mean, that sort of thing. Yeah, we'll have to compare stamps someday. Sorry to bore everybody else on it, but I think that was my first merit badge, was stamp collecting.
Okay.
Just reading through these here. Nerd speaks. Dutch folks have, I am not going to pronounce that, with big spread of regional dishes from the many regions of Indonesia that they explored. So yeah, so Reichsstaffel makes more sense than a smorgasbord for Holland for me. Oh, and Derek put the name to the Ferris wheel. I forgot the name of the brothers. The Velare, V-E-L-A-R-E brothers. I knew they were brothers, and they were really big in the Ferris wheel world. And like I said, they ran into a delay and snagging it. So they actually put a temporary Ferris wheel in to keep everybody entertained while they worked the bugs out on the real one. And you can imagine, oh, my one Ferris wheel isn't working out. Let me go get another one out of the backyard, and I'll just bring that one down. So pretty neat. Stella, oh, okay. Stella, the daring show is at the 1915 Panama Pacific Exhibition and the 39 Golden Gate. I'll have to look for, I have a lot of pictures of Golden Gate. I'll have to look for that. And Wayne, you said it's a kind of virus. What is the virus? I don't know what you were talking about there.
That's a display at the
Oh,
science.
the U.S. Right. Yeah, it's something called a spirofade, or I'll totally mispronounce it. It's but yeah, electron microscope showing you what you can see. Yeah, the U.S. Mint did a huge release of silver dollars in '62. So yeah, they found they had tons of them, and they were paying a fortune to store them, so they wanted to get rid of them. And this one guy for the chicken coop company, I mean, you think about a thing of brilliance. You're in some PR company. That guy says, I want to display my chicken coops at the '62 World's Fair. What do you got? I just wonder how the guy came up with the idea of a ton of silver dollars, or 30 tons of silver dollars. I mean, it's just brilliant, I mean, it worked out really well for everybody concerned. You think what they'd be worth now with the price of silver and everything. I mean, the $1 million, I think that they're all worth about $30 a piece or more now. So yeah, the Calypso ride, popular at Hemisphere 68. Oh, Stan Freberg to commercials for Chungking. They are so damn funny. They are, if you ever get a chance to listen to those, they are really, really good. Stan Freberg, yeah, Carol and I went to a Stan Freberg memorial a number of years ago that a friend of mine put on, and they showed a lot of the commercials and things he had worked on, and he got to talk and that sort of stuff. He was really on in the years, but he did a whole bunch of stuff. Tom, you had your hand up? Tom, you're muted if you're there.
Yeah, hi. You guys
Yeah,
are talking about stamps. I bought this house that was built by a colonel up at Fort Douglas, near the University of Utah, and it was just had a really grand, beautiful entryway and front room. And I owned it for many years, and then on the day I sold it, I just went up to check on things, for the new owner, and then there was the fireplace, and then both sides had the built-in shelves, and there was a space behind the shelf. It looked like stuff could fall back there. So my video's not showing, is it? Oh, how do I was going to show you guys what I found. So leaving the house for the very last time, here it is. I pulled out the bookshelf that had the space behind it, and there were all sorts like postcards and stuff, but among it was this old stamp book. Can you see it?
Yeah, Green Book.
So it starts in, or I should say it ends in 1917. So it's just filled with stamps from all around the world, US stamps. I don't know if you can see it, but I've always wondered,
That's quite a few of them.
whoever had it worked really hard. Hungary, Japan, Luxembourg, Russia, Spain, Sweden.
Yeah, when I was growing up, it's to show how
Pardon?
things changed. A&S department stores. Anybody from New York remember A&S?
Of course.
They had a stamp department in them, and you could go into, over here, a lady buying a fur coat, or over here, somebody buying men's belt or whatever. And I'd be at the counter buying stamps at the A&S department store. And that's neat. Yeah, I see some of the stamps here kind of close up. What country is that, Tom?
United States.
United States? Okay.
Yeah. And then there's a story, behind a lot of them. And like one of the postcards that fell out. 1877.
Wow. Yeah, I bought the fellow Peter Warner, who was a huge World's Fair collector, also was a giant stamp collector. And I was back at an auction buying World's Fair stuff, and there was this tremendous giant box of old covers that nobody wanted to buy. So I figured, what the hell, I'll buy it. It's still sitting in my garage. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it. But some people are saying we ought to show some old stamps. Some of these covers, just the ornate stuff of the envelopes, the return addresses and everything. And I'm looking in the stamps, from the 1800s and everything. And this guy just had tons of this stuff. It's some, I think it was Carolyn saying, I'm not sure who buys this stuff anymore. People must still collect stamps, or I hope they do, because I hope somebody can do something with everything I've collected. But it's funny, Brock, when you talking about collecting the United States stuff, you mentioned Farley. I hadn't heard that name in years. For people that don't know it, he was the Postmaster General, and Franklin Roosevelt liked to collect stamps. And between them, they would just come up with different things, currying favor with President Roosevelt, making special issues and things. So, he had, then again, in Purford, you could get the stamp, but you could get it on a sheet of paper with, some legend around it about who engraved it, or all sorts of other odds and ends. You remember when the big controversy when they redid the I think it was the Don Hammarskjöld stamp that they yeah, you're muted, Brock.
There. Sorry about that. They had the inverted color of one of them, or it had off registered in the printout. And so in order to not have it be worth all this money, they printed a version of it that they sold on purpose that way. And they got a lot of flack for it because and apparently you can find the ones that were the original mistake, but it's very difficult to tell them because they just recreated the mistake exactly like it was. So, you know, it was really interesting, but it was an attempt to say, well, we made this mistake and we don't want people to take advantage of it. And like they did with the famous upside down Jenny, where there was only one sheet of those stamps ever found. So
Yeah, I guess I think the difference between the reprint and the original is something with ultraviolet tagging or something, but
yeah, there might have been. I can't remember the story, but I just remember the controversy about it because I
Yeah.
had just started collecting stamps as a kid when that happened.
yeah, my uncle Steve ran out and got me a sheet of those when they came out, and I still have them there. But I think their concept was they didn't want anybody from the mint to make a mistake and, you know, get rich on it, because if you do it again, we'll do it again. You know?
Yeah.
So it was you know, it was too bad for the people that got them when they first came out, but they were trying to make the statement that they didn't want to see accidental on purpose mistakes coming out.
Yeah.
Great fun. So anybody here, by the way, go to the 62 fair? I did not go, but my aunt went, and she had previously gone to the Expo 58 and came back from that. And so I have to, somewhere, I hope I have the home movie she took of the trip. But she came back from the 62 fair, and that's really what lit my interest in World's Fairs, was that she did take movies, and I joke all the time, she took movies that were thumb in front of the camera lens all around the world. We have a picture of her thumb that is supposedly Rome, you know, stuff like that. But she came back with movies of the 62 fair, and we watched them. And as a 10-year-old kid, I was amazed. They built this and they tore it down. Randy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, that's kind of funny. You should mention that about the movies of, excuse me, the 62 World's Fair. I was in the 4th grade at that time, and classmate, if I remember her name still, Kathy Street, she and her family had gone to the Seattle World's Fair, and they had a bunch of movies that her dad had taken, and they brought them into the classroom and showed them. And I was just fascinated with that whole concept, like you said, building something and then removing it. You know, although Seattle stayed pretty intact, but I just kind of, you know, started investigating others, and, you know, found out there had been a fair in Brussels, and, you know, there was one coming up in New York. So
Yes, it's kind of interesting what wakes up your eye, and, you know, get you going on things like that. It's fascinating. I have some movies of the 62 fair I've got to get around to restoring, but again, look, back then people weren't taking as many movies in 62 as it seemed. 64 seems to be the bellwether for the explosion of home photography and home movies. So I'm always looking for it. And it was a big curve, because by Hemisphere 68, it seemed people stopped taking, you know, so I don't know, that the baby boomer boom, or, you know, whatever, everybody bought the cameras to take pictures of the kids growing up or something. But yeah, a lot of 62 movies don't show up that much. I'm looking for more. So what we're gonna do is show, somebody's mentioning on Hidden Finds. So Tom found his which I call a stamp album, which is pretty darn neat. Anybody else have anything really cool that they found moving an old bookshelf? Or every now and then you hear about somebody remodeling a house and they pull off the old you know, wall board, and then beside, you know, they have all sorts of neat stuff. So Joey, of course, has, you know, I'm sure, all sorts of fun things, but those are not things he found in his walls, hopefully.
Those are things I tore off of other people's walls.
Yeah. And almost
So
all of them were, almost
Yeah,
all of them.
almost all of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't count, but they're fun.
Oh, yeah. No, you know, it's really funny, the things that you have, you know, we all have all knickknacks. You know, I have so many things that you just can't put them all out. But you get certain little things, like this was a little thing that Carol and I were on a trip with. Well, it doesn't show up too well against my white shirt, right? Little lamp, you know, a little ceramic thing, and you try to figure out, oh wow, I don't know if I'm ever going back to Ireland or whatever, I don't get it. It's just all the little things, you know, when you play with them. And now I'm going to drop it and break it. I better put it back. It sits on top of one of my scanners. it's just kind of interesting, all the little things that you pick up in time, and it kind of emotionally connects you back to those times. It used to be a TV show that walls could talk about things they found in old houses. Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, they find a lot of old newspapers, I guess they use as insulation and stuff, but sometimes they find wads of cash, people stuck it in there, or jewelry and all sorts of other odds and ends. It's kind of interesting to see. There's a guy I've been following on Facebook about relics on Long Island that he has a metal detector, and he goes off to people's old farmhouses and stuff out, particularly in Suffolk County, and finds an amazing amount of stuff. A lot of coins, but a lot of belt buckles and old nails and stuff like that. We live across from a park, and every now and then you see people going through the park with metal detectors. And he said there was never anything up here other than an orchard. So maybe you'll find, both fell off a tractor or something. But, anybody else in the metal detecting out there? My son for a while wanted to get in, or maybe it was even Margo before him. Saw a metal detector, thought this is a great way to find money. So we bought one of these really cheap metal detectors that could basically detect an anvil of 2 inches, but anything had no luck. But I would carry a bunch of quarters in my pocket, and we'd walk through the park, and Margo would be going around. I said, "Have you checked over there?" Beep beep beep. Well, she got a quarter, so it's sort of like the electronic version of the Tooth Fairy. But then there's a big hill up behind, outside our house. Big hill with one pine tree on the top of it. Why that tree's up there, I don't know. But we would go up there, and she'd go up the metal detector and find bottle caps. And we told her how those were all pirate treasures from the pirates that lived under the pine tree. Amazing the stuff you can sell to a kid. So, but yeah, it's great fun. Well, I hope everybody had fun going back to 1962. And like I said, I did not make that fair, but my aunt's movies have helped spark something, and then off I went on a journey that has yet to stop on collecting this stuff. So I don't know what we'll be doing next week. Again, if people have things they would like to show us, please. I keep trying to convince some people. Like, she's not here this week. Michelle just went back to the Disney family, Leslie's not here this week. But then went back to the Disney family barn in Marceline. I'd love to see more of that particular thing. So, or other odds and ends. So again, hope folks are having a good week. Is the weather good across the country, or is it hot like it is here?
It's hot here in New York. Wow.
How hot is hot?
Tomorrow is going to be about 95.
Oh, and how's the humidity?
The humidity is not that bad, but there's just no breeze.
Let me just grab one thing here real quick.
Wow, 90 degrees, huh, Richard?
It was 107 when we were driving back from Tulsa yesterday. Oh,
Wow.
yeah. Less fun than you'd think.
In Salt Lake City, we're at a beautiful 68.
Oh, wow, Carolyn, that's.
This was when I got back in the car after being in the sun for an hour and a half directing traffic at an accident yesterday. And,
Oh, boy.
it was really humid. It was not nice at all. So we had stayed overtime working out there, and we just got back to the station. I was just filling out my paperwork. A call went out for another one. I looked at the other guy. He looked at me. We just shook our heads. I mean, I walked into the station. I was bright red from being out in the heat. And the secretary was, "Oh my God, what have you done to yourself?" I said, "I better not go out and do another one." So I decided I would go home and test the pool instead. And the test was successful. It was good. Foggy and cool in the Rockies. Oh my goodness. I see you wearing a sweater or a scarf or something, and I was wondering what the weather was like there.
Yeah, it got chilly. It got chilly out. I think it's only getting the mid 60s today.
God. Hey, Carol, what do you say we do a road trip and go visit Carolyn?
I think that's
Yeah.
a good idea. I was going to say, when I got back into my car yesterday afternoon, even though I had put the silver thing over the steering wheel, I could barely touch it to get home. It was so hot.
Yeah, we'll only allow that if you bring some sandwiches from Pinocchio's. How's that?
Did you like them?
Oh, I did. Yeah. that
Oh,
was
I
great.
thought you guys maybe didn't, I don't know. There, it's not like a gourmet place, but it's been there
No, it
forever.
was great. It was great.
Good, good.
Yeah,
I can bring bagels. I can bring you bagels from Brooklyn, Carolyn, if I could come too.
Yeah, go ahead. Except we had COVID here, so you're gonna have to wait a while.
uh, Hey, Brock, did you ever go to Pinocchio's deli in Burbank?
I think we went there once years ago for lunch or something from
Yeah.
the office.
Yeah, it was real popular. It was just down the street from the studio, so we went there
Yeah.
a lot. So Carolyn and another friend of ours came out. We wanted to find a outdoor place, so we could all stay COVID safe, but some place that was going to be convenient. And they have a little outdoor patio, so we went there, and it's a really, if you're in the Burbank area, it's a really great. It's a deli, but off to the side, well, it's like they have sandwiches and pizza and manicotti and lasagna and that stuff. Italian on one side, but then they have a deli down the other side where you can go and buy meats and cheeses.
Actually, it's a market. It's an Italian market
Yeah,
next
it's a
to it.
market, right?
Yeah.
And I
think we closed the place, didn't we?
we
Probably.
did. I was going to say, we sat there all during the meal talking and everything. And I was thinking, when we came in, there's a big gelato bar and it looked so good. I was thinking, tonight's the day I'm going to go off my diet. But luckily, we talked long enough that when we left, they'd already put the gelato away for the night. So I was able to stay. But I walked in, I was thinking, oh, that looks damn good. So,
Bill, when you were working at WDI, did you ever go to Pecos Bill's?
oh, yeah.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Isn't that the one that,
Yeah, that little tiny stand. It was just the pulled pork and all the different stuff like that. It was just really fabulous food, but just a little
oh my
tiny
God,
thing.
they must have changed. We thought it was the worst food we had ever had in our lives.
Oh, really? What
Yeah,
is that?
It really had changed. I had gone there back in the WDI days, and I had like a roast beef sandwich, and I thought, a barbecue beef sandwich, I thought it was pretty good. About 4 years ago, Carol and I were in the area, and there was a big line, and I said, "Oh God, I haven't been here in years. We ought to go." We went in, and we both got what was billed as a barbecue turkey sandwich. It was just turkey roll. It wasn't even turkey breast, but turkey roll. It was terrible. It was next to inedible, and it was we were sitting there, and other people next to us, I should have had what they had, sort of thing. Because we didn't get barbecued pulled pork or anything. We went for turkey. It was.
I don't think they had
Yeah.
anything that was real food anymore.
Yeah, it may have changed. I know that the son took over from the father who ran it for years. The last time I was there, he had just taken over the place, and it was still pretty close, but that they didn't have as many things on the menu. And I have a feeling it may not even be in the same family's hands, and these people just changed the menu and
Yeah, it could be.
tried to live off their reputation, because their smoked pulled pork sandwich was just really spectacular.
Oh,
And I mean, you'd go there at times because it's like, say, it's this little tiny building, and it was just walk up to the front. And there would be a line down the street of
Right,
people waiting
right.
to get it. So it's a
Yeah.
shame to hear it's not the same. Well, I
we
won't waste my time.
We might try to, maybe if you're in the area, Brock, maybe we'll go give it a try sometime, and you can tell me how it compares. But
Okay.
it was so bad that when we went there, we've used it as the milestone when we have go someplace and have a meal and go, that wasn't so good. And go, yeah, but it wasn't Pecos Bill's.
That's a shame to hear, because it was this neat little, literally hole in the wall place.
it is a hole in the wall.
Oh,
definitely.
Yeah. And but you'd see people like lying down the street waiting to
Oh,
get
yeah.
to go in and get their sandwich.
Well,
So-
it's still not the worst place I think we ever ate. That I think still comes out to a Chinese restaurant in Dubrovnik.
Oh my God, yes. Well,
We-
the All-American Burger in
All that,
England was pretty
yeah.
bad too.
The All-American Burger were in Wales, and we decided to go for a hamburger. The All-American Burger should be pretty good, right? They made McDonald's look gourmet. I mean, they had they had perfected soybean extenders to it's just terrible. We went in there, and for years that was the worst one. But I mean, it was.
Yeah, the Asian restaurant was horrible, yes.
we're in Dubrovnik, and my son is addicted to Asian food, and we decided, we've been eating all these, different. We were there for a couple days, so let's get something different. So we went to this Asian restaurant, and about a third of the way through the meal, we all looked at each other, shook our heads, dropped into a trash can, and said, "Let's go find a traditional restaurant around here again." It was terrible, but it was again a hole in the wall. Oh, actually, it made.
It was just a takeout stand. I
Yeah,
think.
well, yeah, like Pecos Bill, a takeout thing, but it was terrific. But when in Rome, so you go to Dubrovnik, you get Chinese food, right?
The question is, did the people who live there like that place? Because they may not know Chinese food the way we do. But anyway, it was awful.
Because it was there in business. It just hadn't opened that day. So, well, I hope it cools up for some of us, and I hope it warms up for others. And we're supposed to have 100+ degrees, and monsoonal rains on Monday. So it's going to be another disgusting week out here. But, hopefully you get some cool off, Joey. And if you come out and visit, Joey, you're going to have to bring us bagels.
I will definitely, will do that for you.
Hey, Bill, did you have that monsoonal storm come through a couple days ago?
Yes,
It
we
was,
did.
but it was not much of a storm. I mean, we had a few raindrops.
Oh, down here in Long Beach, it was.
I know other places got a lot more, but we don't get a lot for some reason.
Yeah, lightning and thunder is not that common here, but I had lightning strikes on the next block.
Yeah, we saw, well, somebody died. Somebody got hit.
A lady
Like-
walking her two dogs.
And her two
Yeah.
dogs, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
wow.
all Carol's fault, by the way. Our cars were filthy, sitting outside. They were disgustingly dirty, and Carol said, "We need to wash these cars." So we took her car to the car wash, and then I took my car and I washed it, and then the next day it rained. So, you meant the monsoonal stuff. That 3:30, I had left the windows open in the car a bit because it was so hot. And at night at 3:30 in the morning, I woke up and what the hell's that sound? And it was the rain hitting the roof so hard that I had to run out and close all the sunroofs and the windows and everything. And then on Wednesday, I had to go to a funeral, and we were driving there, and you could watch all the lightning off in the hills in the distance, but it was so far off that you didn't hear it. You just saw the flash. When we got to the cemetery, we were sitting there, and if you just hear it now, we could hear the booming coming rolling across the hills as it was getting there. And just at the end of the ceremony, was an officer who got killed in an accident. They were giving the flags to the family. It started to rain right then, and the office behind us said, "Yeah, that's Houston's, sense of humor. He's up down, up there pouring rain down to make us remember." It was just so eerie that just then the rain hit as we were all sitting there. But we didn't get much rain here compared to I saw in the news what you guys got. But now our cars look like crap again.
I hate when you have the perfect layer of dust on your car and then it
Honestly,
sprinkles.
yeah, but I'd trade a bad looking car for a lot of rain.
Oh, yeah, you're right, Carol. Bill, was that officer the one that was killed in the training accident?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, I read about that.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. It was at the academy doing a training exercise, and he got slammed to the ground and broke his neck, and he lived for 4 days after that and passed away.
They were
So,
doing like a mob scene thing or
there's real
something.
conflicting stories about exactly how it happened, but he's wearing what they call the red man suit. And
Yeah, I'm familiar
it's
with
a
that.
big padded suit that, people attack you and knock you down, and you don't theoretically get hurt. And it's one of the things they have to teach you. How do you tackle somebody, take them down? And you need to tackle, you can try to do it with a dummy, but a dummy doesn't bend the same way, and a dummy doesn't fight back. So they'll put you in a red man suit, you do the exercise, and he came down at exactly the wrong angle and, hit face first, and unfortunately did what it did. So it's really a very unfortunate situation. And it was a very, very moving ceremony. It was quite a day. Well, hopefully a while before the next one of those. So Well, again, I hope everybody had fun back in '62, and again, it's Super World's Fair. And if you ever get a chance to go to Seattle, you got to go to the fairgrounds. The Space Needle's great. You can go to the gift shop. My daughter, fiance, is in Seattle, and every time she goes, she shows a picture of my book on sale at the Space Needle. So I appreciate that. But it's a great park. The International Fountain's been redone. Some of the existing buildings are still there. The Glass Museum is super. I'm really sorry they took out the amusement stuff for it, but it's well worth the exhibit there. I imagine you've seen it, Randy?
The Glass Museum?
Yeah.
No, I haven't been up there since that opened.
Oh, it's really just
I
spectacular.
heard, yeah.
Amazing.
Glass. It's and then they've got the this science fiction museum and other odds and ends up there.
But
So
they also have like a rock and roll museum or something up there.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the monorail.
That's
Don't
called
forget
the
monorail.
Experience Music.
Yeah.
Right.
Great. Well, we'll see you all in a week, and I will come up with something. I'll see where the time machine takes us to next week as we remain lost in the infinite corridors of time. Bye.
Bye, thanks, great show.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Bill. Good job.
Thanks, Bill. Great show, Bill. Thank you.
Thanks, Joey. Bye.
Bye, Carol. Bye, Beth.